The windows were heavily tinted, so it's unclear whether Jalil Abin Amir Aziz was in the backseat. That's the 19-year-old accused of helping ISIS. We do know that he's going to be in jail until his preliminary hearing, which a few minutes ago was scheduled for next week. But in the meantime, we've been going through more pages of the criminal complaint, learning more about these charges. At 5, you might remember we told you that Aziz is accused of using more than 57 Twitter accounts to spread ISIS propaganda. Well, the complaint goes on to say the reason there were so many accounts was because Twitter kept shutting them down.
So I kept telling my husband from, I think when Justin was little, we need to start putting money away for college. He's applied for...
So Elena and her husband put away what they could for their son's future at Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Looking back, if we didn't have that much money saved up, our son probably would have had to have come home from college.
To keep her son wearing the IUP crimson,
I think that's...
Elena's gone in the red.
It's still not a fun bill to get.
Especially now. State system records show in 2004, the average cost of attendance at IUP was $10,489. Now it's almost doubled to $20,816.
We're caught. We don't really have a choice. We pay it, and we don't ask questions because it's something that we want our children to have.
Now we're getting answers. Why has the cost of public higher education skyrocketed? Pennsylvania state schools point to funding cuts.
So that makes it increasingly difficult as our costs go up. Our only other source of revenue is really tuition.
With all this talk of funding, we wanted to see how state schools are spending the money they do have. So we went through hundreds of pages of payroll documents over the last 10 years. We looked at the salaries of non-union employees. So presidents, deans, assistants, information technology staff, just to name a few. In 2004, the total payroll for non-union employees was more than $93 million. In 2014, it was up nearly 42% to $132 million.
Why that kind of increase? Because that's more than inflation.
Overall, if you look at the average salary paid to a non-represented employee 10 years ago to today, though that increase actually pretty much tracks inflation.
Economists say the inflation rate has averaged 2.13% per year. But last year, when tuition and fees went up, the president of Bloomsburg got a 10% raise. He now makes more than $248,000 per year. Westchester's president received a 13% raise. He now makes more than $273,000 per year.
That number can be tough for a parent to swallow if they've just written out a check for an increased tuition.
Right. There were two components to those raises.
A merit increase and a market adjustment.
Our university presidents generally are paid below the national average.
Why are those adjustments being made now, especially with a lack of state funding and with enrollment numbers taking a dip?
It was a commitment the board made several years ago. This is a phased-in process, and again, I think it's the board just believes that it is important, again, to do what we can to make sure that we have the very strongest leadership.
So there's always a balance in any employment situation with trying to get the best employees versus trying to, especially when you're a public entity, doing it something that's affordable.
Auditor General Eugene DePasquale's recent state system audit shows the schools are doing well, but he says they could do more to keep tuition down. So we told him what we found. For example, the assistant to the president of Clarion University got a 50% jump in pay over the last 10 years. She now makes 6 figures. Then there's Bloomsburg, which has a president, an executive assistant to the president, an executive secretary, and a deputy to the president. The Auditor General says there is such a thing as a luxury position.
You got to really take even a second glance at whether it's a critical position on furthering education today. And sometimes there's a situation where you just see that position just isn't necessary anymore.
But there's more. In 2004, 16% of non-union employees made 6 figures. In 2014, 30% made 6 figures.
That's a lot of employees making 6 figures.
Yes, it is, but again, if you look at the average numbers, our average salary has increased at about the rate of inflation.
In the private sector, retiring employees often make up for the ones who get raises.
That's not really happening as often here, so is that something that's sustainable?
I guess on the one hand, I think it shows the system's a good place to work. You know, if you don't have a lot of turnover, that is going to affect your payroll over time.
There is a long-term sustainability issue.
Parents like Alana say it's time for solutions.
There needs to be some type of a cap that's put on the salaries.
But the state system goes back to funding as its biggest challenge, not salaries. Reports show the schools have lower tuition increases than the national average, even with all Pennsylvania's funding cuts.
We would agree completely with the Auditor General when he says we need to do more. We do need to do more. We would also, I think, agree with the Auditor General when he said that the state needs to do more.
But these state universities are there so that everyday Pennsylvanians, that those kids that have the grades, they can go there and not be saddled with lifelong debt. And that is basically being threatened now with the lack of enough state investment.
But on that same note, the Auditor General says if state schools get more funding, they need to hold the line on tuition, and they also need to be transparent. And I will say, Flora and Val, so far they have been transparent with us. This is the fastest response I've ever gotten to know to a right-to-know request. We had all these documents the next day. It all started when neighbors contacted us. They didn't understand why waking up to this was how they found out about major construction in their backyards.
We're having a difficult time getting information, getting any kind of responses that would address our concerns.
So we investigated, going through all this year's Lower Paxton Township meeting minutes. We found other projects for which supervisors called for public hearings, local input, saying, quote, "It's good to get everyone involved." But not everyone was involved in the decision-making for the construction of a new district judge's office on residential land. The minutes show no calls for local input, no traffic or community studies, not even a mention of how the work might affect neighbors. So what made this project different? We discovered the office is for Magisterial District Judge Joseph Lindsay. Turns out his wife is Lower Paxton Township Supervisor Robin Lindsay. Right there in black and white on public record, she voted for the project. Pennsylvania's Township Supervisor's Handbook specifically says supervisors must abstain from voting in conflicts of interest. They must also state the conflict publicly. According to meeting minutes, that did not happen. So we called Lower Paxton Township's office. We got the supervisor's voicemail, so we left a message and sent an email. No immediate response. But there's more. Meeting minutes show the property sold to the county for just over $148,000 based on a, quote, mutually agreed appraisal. So we pulled up that appraisal. It says the land is worth more, $190,000 to $220,000. Neighbors say that's a pretty good deal for land going to their supervisor's husband's new office. The appraisal also lists the property as commercial, even though zoning maps show it's residential. So we called Dauphin County. A spokesperson says county solicitors stand by the report, even though township supervisors say the property is residential. In the meantime, neighbors say they're just trying to figure out how to work with the township.
They've been fighting us the whole time. So as a logical person, I'd have to wonder, something doesn't sound right.
Something else that doesn't sound quite right, Dennis. Earlier this week, when neighbors took their concerns to the supervisors at a public meeting, the supervisors said they were surprised. It was the first they heard of issues, but I'm holding an email right now detailing concerns about zoning from neighbors sent to the supervisors and the township manager almost 2 weeks before that meeting happened. Sources tell me that our investigations uncovering issues in the borough of Steelton contributed to the decision to put the police chief and the borough manager on paid leave. Issues like missing meeting minutes and potentially improper sign-offs on building projects in the borough of Steelton. So we've been going through public records to find out what it's going to cost you for these people to not go to work, and the numbers are staggering.
You're a hateful person. Wow.
We've shown you the Steelton chaos in past public meetings.
This is the way you talk to taxpayers?
But the recent problems are being handled behind closed doors. Police Chief John King and Borough Manager Sarah Golightly both on paid administrative leave.
Oh, mercy. I couldn't believe that when I heard that. You know, people, I don't understand what's the matter with them today. You know, they just do crazy things.
Jane Lease has lived in Sealton for the last 15 years. Her tax dollars are paying for King's and Golightly's leave. Here's why she's worried. Public records show in 2012, Police Chief John King made just over $91,000 a year. By 2014, he was making more than $111,000. That's a 21.5% jump. Now take a look at Borough Manager Sarah Golightly's 2012 salary, more than $39,000 a year. By 2014, she was right around $73,000. That's roughly an 85% jump.
And they used taxpayers' money. Well, that's unreal.
In the past, Golightly has said she deserves it.
After working 14-hour days.
But where were those 14-hour days being worked? Were taxpayers getting their $73,000 worth? We've gotten complaints the borough manager was never in her office.
She could give me a call back on my cell phone.
We tried to get a hold of Golightly on several occasions over the last few months.
Leaving a message for Sarah Golightly.
No luck. We even knocked on her door to get her side of the story Thursday. No one's answering. Today we picked up the phone again, this time to get answers from City Council President Jeff Wright.
The mailbox is full.
Other council members say they can't tell us what happens next. At least, not yet.
Why hide it, you know? Eventually it's going to come out.
This is a project with several parts, including construction of a district justice office. Neighbors are miffed it's practically in their backyards. They weren't notified, and they say their property values and quality of life will suffer. We took a look through public records and found out the Dauphin County IDA wanted to put its district justice office back here. Land on the east side of Portia Drive zoned institutional, but the township moved it to this residential land west of Portia Drive, much closer to the neighbors.
Any way you look at this.
At Tuesday night's meeting, neighbors asked the supervisors put the DJ's office on the original site farther from their properties. They said they'd consider. But we've been wondering, why was the project pushed toward the neighborhood in the first place? So after the meeting, we asked. Chairman William Hawk tried to tell us the township never moved the project.
You look at this site again.
Yeah, I do. I have the appraisal.
You look at it.
It's on
You'll
the
find
east
that you're
side.
Incorrect.
The land that was appraised is on the east
Find
side.
that incorrect.
So just on the record, you're telling me
I'm
that the
sorry.
land was on the east side.
I'd like some clarification.
Waiting on that clarification, Chairman Hawk did walk away before we had a chance to ask him about the labor and industry investigation into whether the township even has the right permits for this project to happen. We did, though, want to honor his request that we look at the public records again, so we did, and they show exactly what we've been reporting, that the township moved this project closer to the neighborhood, and still no one's telling us why. So now our request is for the supervisors to take a closer look at those public records and respond to our questions. We'll be waiting for those answers.
Come on, Lonnie, come on, kid.
This team is more than competitive.
They want to win. We lost the first game, but we'll come out and try and win this one.
But take a closer look at the game. Underneath that in-it-to-win-it spirit, you'll see something else. It's called resilience.
This leg right here is made out of carbon fiber. It's actually called the Sprint Foot. I use this for running, sprinting, anything athletic.
The materials that make up these prosthetic limbs aren't nearly as strong as the bonds these players have forged with each other.
I lost my leg in Afghanistan due to a roadside bomb. The vehicle I was in went down a canyon, came back out, and that was it.
Spend some time talking to the players and you'll hear similar stories. They're part of the Wounded Warrior amputee softball team, made up of veterans and active duty soldiers who have lost limbs post 9/11.
We have family members that, come out and say we never thought we'd see him play ball again.
That's why the purpose of the team isn't to commiserate, it's to celebrate.
We don't want the other team to feel sorry for us. That's a major thing there. Once you see us out there diving for balls, getting good hits, sprinting, doing all the good stuff, you can overcome anything. You see guys here missing 2 legs, missing arms. I mean, there's no excuses. I mean, you can adapt and overcome to anything that, you put your mind and soul into.
And that doesn't just apply to the players.
If you watch the audience watching our guys, you'll see that they truly are inspired, and we see people walking away from our events wanting to do something more, wanting to do something special.
Strike. Nice pitch.
That's why the team has traveled to more than 100 cities, including here at Red Lion High School. The team won this game, by the way. But no matter the score, it all boils down to one word.
Inspiration. These guys are nothing but inspiring, and we hope that they bring that back to their families, to their schools to the community, that we are able to adapt and overcome anything.
Working for you in York County, Amanda St. Hilaire, ABC 20.